Today we're going to talk about this little guy, the Pocket Mini. So we're going to start by looking at the specs, breaking it down. We'll look at some rigs and cast some rigs to use with it. I'll provide my thoughts and my recommendations, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, so here we have the Pocket Mini. Let's take a closer look. It's got a nice gold and black aesthetic artwork. Spec-wise, we're looking at 9.6 inches. So it's extremely compact. And it extends out to 10.2 feet. So this thing is definitely a grower. In terms of its weight, it's super light. It's 1.33 ounces with the rod plug. And without it, it's under 1.3 ounces. And that's just great for reducing fatigue. You almost don't notice that you have the rod, that you're holding the rod. The parts over here at either end are plastic, so the screw cap is plastic and the rod plug is also plastic. One nice thing about it is it's easy to get off, but it's tight enough in there, snug enough so that it's just not going to come off by itself, which could be an issue. The other obvious thing is it doesn't have a cork handle, and Nissan does call this a Keiryu rod. I don't think there's really any difference between calling it a Keiryu rod or a Tenkara rod. It's a compact telescopic rod. If you compare this to the Tenkara Mini, they're basically the same, except the Tenkara Mini has the cork. I have handled both those rods side by side. I've taken the RFI measurements and they were identical. In fact, I've even switched out the tip, the Lillian section of the Tenkara Mini, and put it in the Pocket Mini, and it worked fine. Nissan tells me that it's a different tip. I couldn't tell a difference, but my sense is that these rods are so similar. The biggest difference, of course, and it's something that you should consider if you're looking into this compact rod, is the cork handle. I love the fact that this doesn't have a cork handle because I think it improves the sensitivity. With that said, the cork handles can be really nice as well. And, you know, they have some benefits. If you're used to using a cork handle with your other Tenkara rods, it might just feel more familiar. Now, what this does have, the 3.5 inches right here, you can see it right here, is this coating. This is an anti-slip coating. And this is something that Nissan does extremely well with their rods. And you can't really tell a difference unless your hands are wet and the rod is wet. Then you can feel that it's really smooth here. And then if I just press on it, you can feel kind of that friction there. It's very well done. So again, the RFI on this is 4.8. What does that mean? Well, that means that it's technically a medium action rod. Anything above 4.6 gets you into a medium action. So it's just barely there. It's a high, it could be on the high end of a soft action or the low end of a medium action. And the CCS rating was 15 pennies. So it took 15 pennies to bend this thing a third of its length. So overall, just a great compact rod. Because it's so light, there's very little fatigue. Extremely easy to use. And to fish it all day. One final thing before I forget. This thing has 17 sections in it. And I'm going to lay them out here so you can see it. Okay, here we have the Pocket Mini completely disassembled. 17 sections in total. That is a lot of sections. If you ever take it apart, just be careful. These are really kind of thin, small pieces, and it's really just an impressive engineering feat, in my opinion. If you want to make a really small collapse rod like they've done, you've got to have a lot of sections, and that does add to complexity. Nissan has said that this is one of their more complicated rods that they make, and it's no surprise when you lay it out like this. Okay, so what you have here basically from what we saw in the specs, this is a very light, very sensitive rod. It is a high soft action, low medium action rod, which actually is perfect for what this is, for the length of it. That soft action is going to protect this rod, is going to protect it from breaking. I often get asked, does this thing break a lot? And the truthful answer is no. The section that will break most commonly is the tip section with the Lillian. But other than that, very few other parts break, and even that is rare. And what I recommend with anybody fishing a small rod like this is when you have a fish on, keep the rod tip up and the butt out a little bit, kind of like this, so that you're putting the pressure on the bend of the rod through that top to midpoint, and that allows the rod to absorb the most energy and bring in that fish. Now, the use case for this to me is really clear. This is a small fish rod, 8 inches to 11 inches. We're talking trout, we're talking little bluegill and sunfish, and we're talking about small water, little streams and little rivers, backpack country. This is the type of rod where you might be out there, you might be near some beautiful water, and you're thinking, man, I don't have any gear with me. I wish I had gear. And you're so kind of upset about it that you're looking for fishing line and maybe you're going to attach it to a stick and throw it in the water because you know there's fish there. Well, the Pocket Mini is going to fit that bill perfectly. It's always going to be there for you, and it's just so compact that it doesn't get in the way of anything when you're out there backpacking or just going out into the country. So it's beautiful from that standpoint. So let's talk about the best ways to use the Pocket Mini. I'm going to throw some rigs out here. I'm going to cast a few, and I'm just going to provide my thoughts, and then we can try to figure out maybe what are rigs that you should consider. Okay, so let's talk about rigs to use for the Pocket Mini. And here I have 2 rigs with a Tenkara level line, 3.5 level line. These work really well with the Pocket Mini. So the first version I have here, let's go with this one, is 10.3 feet. That's about the same length as the rod. That's a very convenient length, easy to bring in fish, good for tighter spaces, tighter water. And you can just see it here, it's just a Tenkara line. And we have a Kabari fly on this one. And on the other one, we have a little Parachute Adams. That's a little beat up. But this is 12 feet, and that's also a good length. I personally wouldn't go much beyond that for the 10.2 Pocket Mini. Some folks like to go much longer, but I find that 11 to 12 feet is a good length to have on that line. So the next rig that we're going to look at is one that's made from the 9-foot floating line that we sell, and you can see it here. And this is a very high visibility line. It's a supple line. It's very easy to cast, and I do like this line a lot. So what I've done here is I've cut it down so that it's 10 feet total, same length as the Pocket Mini, little Parachute Adams. By the way, the tippet for all of these is 7X or 6X, either mono or fluoro, depending on the use case. So that's the first one with the floating line. And the next one that we're going to cast is another floating line, but this one is 14 feet. Now, I borrowed this from the Inyo, and that's why it's 14 feet. That's longer than I normally would use for the Pocket Mini. But sometimes you need that extra reach. You can see that this is also 4X, which I would never use on the Pocket Mini. Nonetheless, I'm going to cast this and just see how effectively the Pocket Mini is casting it and how well I feel, how accurate I feel casting this. Here we have a little jig nymph. It's got a little hackle there to give it a little action. So it's a nice setup. And then the last rig here, this is a dry dropper. I love dry droppers. It's kind of always my go-to with the Pocket Mini, with a lot of rods actually. In this case, this one is made from braid. This is a 50-pound braid, and I believe that this tapers down to about a 15-pound braid. I think that's probably right. And then from there, it tapers down further to, it goes to the tippet, which I believe here is 7X. So we have a dry dropper. We have a little yellow Sally, and then we got a little nymph below that. Very effective. So those are the rigs. All right, so in terms of the rigs, all the rigs work really well with the Mini. As you can see in that video, hopefully, the Pocket Mini casts lines really nicely. It casts that 9-foot floating line really well, it casts that Tenkara line really well, and that braid line worked really well as well. So that's a lot of wells, sorry. But if I had to pick one line, just one line, I would probably go with that braided line that's a little bit tapered. And honestly, I don't think you need to have it tapered. You can just do that 50-pound braid line and then do some 7X on it, and you're gonna be good to go. And the reason I picked that line is because it's very easy to cast with the bow cast. You can also lob it, and it's such a light rig that I feel like every time I cast that into the water, I get a bite. And I know that's an exaggeration, but probably more so than any line. And I think it has to do with the fact that I'm putting such a light presentation in the water. There's no disturbance. The presentation is perfect. I like using that dry dropper here with a yellow Sally or some other dry fly, maybe a parachute Adams and a little midge. So I would go with this. My backup would probably be that 9-foot floating line. I'm just partial to it. It's highly visible. It'll be great for windy situations. It casts really easy. And I can pick a length that I think is going to be right. I can start out with a longer length, and then if I need to, I can just cut it if I'm in a situation and make the line a little bit shorter. So again, I'm going to be using 7x tippet in all of these situations. There's no reason really to go to 5x in my opinion. You're just putting too much stress on the rod. Okay, the other tip that I have is a case. Now, one of the things I don't love about the Pocket Mini and Nissin rods generally, or any of the Japanese rods, is they don't come with cases. And in the case of the Pocket Mini, that does stress me out a little bit. It's very compact. You can throw it in a backpack, but you can also forget about it, and it can get banged by other stuff. You can almost step on it, and it's just a level of stress that doesn't need to be there because it's really easy just to make something. Now, I rigged this up literally like 20 minutes before I was running out the door. I'm like, shoot, I need something for the Mini to protect it. So I had this 1-inch PVC pipe. I cut it down, a little piece of cardboard, duct taped it here at the end. I've got a little foam winder, and I just cut a little piece out of it. And I had some like 20-pound mono line. I just poked a hole through it, and I attached a washer to the end and a little O-ring right here. So what I do is I put the Mini in here, and I just push this all the way down so it hits the Mini, so there's no play while it's in here. And I got to tell you, I love this thing. It's ugly, it's crude, and I'm sure you guys have way better suggestions. If anybody does, let me know. But I just throw this in my backpack, and it just gives me peace of mind that when I'm out there with the Mini, I'm not going to break it, you know. And then I just take it out, put it in my fanny pack, put it on my chest pack, and it's just awesome. Okay, let's wrap it up. Our final thoughts on the Pocket Mini. Number one, incredibly sensitive. The most sensitive rod I've used personally. I feel like you can just feel the fish kiss your fly, just like Wilson's doing there. He's our little Keiryu cat. So that's number one. Number two, because it's so light, there's no fatigue. You can fish with it all day, and it just feels like it's an extension of your arm. Just incredible. Number three, and I mentioned this kind of throughout the video, but the Pocket Mini is present. It's there because you'll always have it. There's no reason not to throw it in your backpack, not to put it in your fanny pack when you're going out into the backcountry, into some place where there might be some great water. Obviously, if you have a dedicated trip, then you're definitely going to have it there. But that's the other great reason to get the Pocket Mini. Those are the three main reasons. Alternatives to the Pocket Mini, the Tenkara Mini is a great alternative. It's a great rod, very similar, like I mentioned, similar action. It's more about the cork. You could also say that Tenkara Mini maybe gives it a little bit more robustness because it can, absorb more bangs if it's sitting around. But that's why you just make yourself a little case, and I think if you do that, you're going to be good to go. So that's going to be a wrap. Let me know what questions you have. Put some comments down below. And thanks for watching. And till the next video.